Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and you're now tuned into the most powerful and informative platform, bar none, on the entire YouTube and social media landscape. Thank you for giving me another hour of your day and another day of your time. Right now, we're waiting for former CIA analyst Larry Johnson to be with us. But while we wait, we've got a lot of things to talk about. So let's talk about them, okay? First of all, I don't understand why the live stream brought so much trouble. The live stream from yesterday brought so much trouble on my end. I really appreciate these social media platforms allowing us to broadcast and to do things. But if you guys understood what the things that happened after that broadcast behind the scenes, you would be frustrated because of the stuff that is going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. But we're going to continue to maintain and continue to grow and to keep pushing it forward. Now, if you guys give me 1 second, I'll hit Larry up. 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Let me see. Hold on 1 second, everybody. Just while you're holding on, I won't let this be fruitless. We will go into I'll play a clip and then we'll come back. It's a 2-minute, 42-second clip. I usually don't do this, but I'm trying to shoot him a message to make sure he got the last stream link or whatever. So let me shoot this, and I'll be right back on the other side of this here.
I must contest one or two false dichotomies that I think you made in your otherwise excellent telephone call. First of all, the vast majority of Sudanese are black Africans. Some of them have Arab blood, some of them don't, but all of them speak Arabic, all of them are Africans. It is wrong to fall into the trap of saying that the north of what was once a united Sudan are Arabs and the south are Africans. Most are Arabs. At least if you speak Arabic, you are an Arab. That is what being an Arab is. An Arab is anyone who is an Arabic speaker. It's not anything else. It's not blood or genetics. An Arab is a person whose native tongue, whose mother language is Arabic. And that is all of the people in today's Sudan, some of whom are blacker than others, but almost all of whom are black Africans. So we shouldn't fall into that trap, because that was the trap that was sprung not just to divide Sudan north and south, but east and west. The once Hollywood celebrity cause celebras of Darfur and other conflicts in the west of Sudan were equally falsely posed as conflicts between Africans and Arabs. Israel is busy in Sudan. The United States, as you quite correctly described, is extremely busy. They are extremely opposed to Russia having any kind of military presence on the territory of Sudan, but very much in favor of themselves having as much a presence as possible. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. The two generals that are fighting, you're right. Neither of them is my cup of tea. I have no dog in that fight between these two generals. But the reality is that the United States fomented this civil conflict.
Everybody's coming to the same realization, and they're starting to acknowledge it. If you go back 2 shows ago, 2 live streams ago, I talked on this issue in depthly, and I put maps up to show you the strategic areas in that region and why America was destabilizing Sudan, and how it connected with the trying to break the back of the global South, which is a conglomerate of nations, excuse me, from Africa, Latin America, the Caribbeans, West Asia, Asia proper, and how America seems to be losing out, and how she's using her destabilization tactics, color revolutions, divide and conquer tactics, wars, and her fighting terrorism to push her agenda to keep these people off balance and to keep these people reeling from the fight on terrorism or against terrorism, and what that means to dollar hegemony. It is very important you look at the show 2 days ago. Now, I got a message asking me what was I talking about with the show yesterday. All you have to do is go to my show yesterday, and you'll see that it's been flagged, and also that it's been restricted. You have to be 18 years or older. And as I'm sitting here, I got another restriction just sent to me. If you just heard that beep, I'm looking down at the thing. So I'm trying to figure out what's so wrong with the video from yesterday. All we did was address what took place. And we prefaced everything that we did with, we do not in any way, shape, or form encourage violence. We don't encourage the disrespect of people, or the disrespect of life, or the sanctity or security of life. But what we have to do is show both sides of the equation. You can't just look at one side of the equation and take that side of the equation view, and then everything is peachy cream. You can't do that, because that's biasness. You have to look into everything, and then as you're doing it, you have to put the person that has the biased objectives into the shoes of the ones that's being censored, and then flip the script and then show it from a different angle so people can look. Now, some of the points I made are being made on major shows today. But before I address that, let me put this up there, because I don't want my content coming down. I don't want a copyright strike. I don't want any of that. So I just played a video. So before there's a copyright infringement thing, let me put this up there, because I'm trying to teach. Okay. Give me one. Here it is, right here. So look. All right, we're back. I had to put that up there because we are supposedly, according to law, be able to use content from other creators and other platforms if the use of it is to teach a lesson or to show a pattern or something like that. And I guess that stuff doesn't apply to me and my platform. I guess everybody can use mine and it's okay, but I can't use somebody else's, especially these major channels. And I can't explain what this means. That is just the rights of everybody else. Okay, I'm trying to talk in between the lines because I don't want a strike or to be banned off the air. But we're waiting for Mr. Larry Johnson. I just sent him a message. Hopefully he'll be able to access the link. That's another thing I have to say as we're talking on truth, and I'll get back to that. When we do shows and we send out links, sometimes we think the guest gets the links. We'll send it via phone. We'll send it via text message, and sometimes social media platforms. And it's ironic that some of them never get any of them until after the show or until midway in the show or something like that. Am I saying that's what happened? That's what happened to Larry? I don't know. Okay. But you know that he's always been good on his word. He's always come through. So, but he did tell me, he's busy. He was going to give us 30 minutes of his time. And so I don't want to show you the email because it's a private email. But he did tell me that, and so we're waiting on him. And while we're waiting on him, we're going to get back into the situation. So yesterday, I was talking and I addressed a lot of issues, especially when it was concerning the situation in Ukraine and in Russia and the attack that happened over the Kremlin. And I gave my analysis and my thoughts on what should be done, and I gave hypotheticals, and I told the audience, well, these are hypotheticals. We're not advocating violence or war or anything, but we must address these things. We can't leave this stuff out here, because if we leave this stuff out here, the Western media and the Western press will have you believing that at nighttime it's day, and in the daytime it's nighttime. And you're not supposed to sleep on beds. You're supposed to sleep inside beds because of the bizarro mentality. And it's either my way or the highway. Again, one of the main points I try to convey to everybody, isn't it ironic that the very Western societies, specifically and especially America, that is always trumpeting diversity, is censoring diverse thoughts and schools of thoughts of opinion. The hypocrisy, the arrogance, and the contempt that is shown for people is astonishing. Right? It's unbelievable. But I want you to just roll with me for a minute, and we'll try to because I wasn't planning on doing a show. I got the chickens out there. You can hear them in the background, and I was doing some things, and I was going to hop on for 30 minutes with Larry and just talk to you guys. And hopefully I'll try to extend the show. Hopefully he'll be able to get in. Now, listen, if he is for some reason not here in the next 20 to 30 minutes, we'll cut the show short. I'll call him, and then I'll reschedule it, and we'll have a definite rescheduling. Okay. So, but we're gonna be patient, because patience is a virtue, and we'll try to wait for him to get online with us. Okay. Now, I was saying that, what if America was hit by a drone? We saw what she did with 9/11. She waged relentless global war on nations that had nothing to do with 9/11. And she justified her escapade, her global escapade, and bloodlust, and her unquenchable desire to reshape and fashion the world and mold each nation into her image and into her likeness, off of what took place near the Pentagon and what took place in New York. Okay. Now, if we are being fair, and this was a direct attack on the Kremlin and those who frequent the Kremlin, being the National Security Council chairman, the vice chair, the president, the intelligence chief, some of the highest congressional members of the Russian Federation's parliament. Do they not have the right to do that? Huh? These are the questions I pose. I'm not advocating war. I'm saying, why is it that when America says something, everybody just takes it lock, stock, and barrel, and she has a track record of embellishing things, lying, running color revolution programs, false flag terror operations? Why is it that we give the benefit of the doubt to a person like that, or a nation like that, or a government like that, and yet we censor the feelings or what could be in the minds of those who have actually suffered what America suffered, right? Now, think about this. I want you to think of the magnitude of this. What if Iran, and I said this on my show, what if, and now I hear this morning, a lot of pundits and stuff are asking these questions, but they weren't asking these questions yesterday when I was talking about it. So after I talked about it, the bigger channels started posing the questions. The reason I posed the questions is because the bigger channels were not posing the questions. Okay? And I sat up all day long watching to see if someone would pose the questions that I posed yesterday. No one did. Okay? Not your favorite YouTube channel, none of that. Okay? But we did that because we like to provoke thought here. The reason we come under a lot of strain and stress from these platforms is because they want to dumb you down. They don't want you to make the gray matter click. They want you to be a dumbed down stooge following any and everyone who may appease you instead of looking at the bones and the essence of what is being presented to you. So, what if Iran would have flown a drone over the White House? Not one, but two. What if Russia had done that? What would America's response be? Do you think her response would be mild? Do you think that she would just let that go? Huh? We have a historical record that she never lets things go like that. Hell, she didn't let her beef with Gaddafi go. She had a beef with Gaddafi for 40 years. And she never let it go. She has a beef with Iran because of the revolution that took place and ousted the Shah, their puppet. She has yet to let that go. Iran has been under tremendous sanctions. They even executed the second most popular and most powerful person in Iran, General Soleimani. What if Iran would have taken out General Milley? What would have been the consequences? See, this is what I'm telling you. The mentality, this exceptional mentality. I can and no one else can do these things. The laws apply to you, not me. I make the laws, I break the laws, but you must abide by the laws or else you must suffer war, sanctions, or demonization and isolation. A system under such pretenses cannot go on in perpetuity. This is an impossibility. When you are alienating everybody, and then at the same time you want them to buy your debt, or you want them to trade with you. You want to hold the gun, the barrel of a gun to somebody's head, and at the same time say, my ally, my friend. And they are even holding a grudge against Erdogan, their so-called ally of Turkey, because he overcame, with the help of Assad, the president of Syria, and Russia, he overcame a U.S.-led, NATO-inspired, and orchestrated coup to overthrow him. They're still trying to do it. So what do you think America's reaction and actions would be if she had to suffer the same thing as what the Kremlin suffered? These are questions that should be posed. And we can guesstimate what her reaction would be, because all we have to do is look back and calculate time. What happened? What did she do when this happened? What did she do when this happened? What did she do when this happened? And we can see, we can get a clear picture of what her a probability of what her response may be or will be. That's all I'm saying. I'm not advocating violence. As a matter of fact, to inform the people is to try to prevent violence, because the more refined person will use violence as a last resort. It is only when you have been handicapped and don't have enough information or enough knowledge do you resort to violence. In America's is the government that has education and still resorts to violence. That's her first and last motive of operation. So again, I point back to something that I talked about. Come on, Larry, come on. I pointed back to something. Now, I'm going to pose these questions to you again. When has the empire, the U.S. empire, ever completely funded a nation, armed the nation, trained the nation, has intelligence operatives in the very highest offices of that nation, has military attachés embedded in that military, and has made the decisions of their sovereign nation? When has that nation ever been able to act outside of America's wishes? And if they tried to, what happened to the said nation that did that? So a lot of pundits, they're trying to distance themselves or distance America from the actions of Ukraine, when we know that America and NATO, this has been talked about since the war. that Ukraine does not make sovereign decisions. These decisions lie in the hands of those who are in the halls of power in Washington, D.C., and London, and in Brussels. Now, if that has been the case before the war started, and Ukraine sent 2 drones over the Kremlin, tell me how in the world they did that without the intelligence capability of the United States. And tell me, how did American intelligence did not know about it? If they have all of the lines tapped, if they control the SBU, if they control the government, the Defense Department, how can that action be taken outside of someone in the Western intelligence apparatus know it? Huh? That is an impossibility. What I'm trying to get you to do is think. That's why I brought these issues up yesterday. Because I wanted to strike something in you, and I also wanted to strike something in some of these larger channels so that they can present this stuff to you. They won't say that I said the stuff. It doesn't matter about that. So long as you get the stuff and you're educated on the stuff. And you start using that gray matter for something other than court TV and Kim Kardashian and how big her butt is and the playoff games and all of this stuff. Because that's frivolous and inconsequential stuff. We're looking at a world that is crashing and a world that is coming in. These two worlds are colliding. A new world where wealth and power and influence is distributed more equally. It's coming in. And the world that was built upon piracy, international piracy, theft, robbery, rape, right? A world that is built on injustice, class warfare, and fascism is on its way out. And those who have benefited and who have maintained that system are fighting like hell to try to maintain it. And one of their main weapons is to dumb down the populace and then to infiltrate every movement that is trying to educate the people so that they can, from the inside, as they're doing in Ukraine, run things. They'll give you something that you think that is in line with what you're thinking, and you'll go to that program or you'll sign up for that person. And some of these people are operatives. That's what they are. You have to look closer at this stuff because the people in power, the elite, they do not respect you. If they did, how in the hell can they appropriate $150 billion to a nation 10,000 miles from its shores, while at the same time allowing massive unemployment, massive homelessness, right? Massive hunger to go on within its own borders, to defund their own educational system when we all know and understand that proper education is the guiding light to a civilized and progressive society. You are defunding your own future for the sake of some short gains to be the dominant power 9,000 miles away. This is lunacy. And no one really addresses this stuff. Without the proper education, the society eventually dies. That's why you see so much violence in the inner city and at the edge of the suburbs, because they don't have access or they have not been allowed the proper education. And if you don't have the proper education, you are hard fixed to have proper guidance. And if you don't have proper guidance and all you feed upon is violent music and violent movies, you become a violent person sometimes, because science has proven that environment shapes a person just as much as their DNA. But you are so concerned with what's going on 9,000 miles away that you're not focusing on what is happening at home. There is an implosion going on here. And they are trying to mask the economic implosion, the political implosion. There is economic insolvency. There is ethical and moral insolvency. all across America, and we're seeing the breakdown of institutions right within our borders, and she is focused on Ukraine. If that is not contempt, you tell me what is. These are things that are directly related to what is going on in Russia and Ukraine. There's an old saying, as I often like to use: sweep around your own front door before you come and sweep around mine. America is sweeping around everybody's front door, and her house has fallen into a total state of disrepair. Feeding on that, the racial divide, the cultural divide, the financial divide. And they continue to do this thinking that they are getting a leg up, and they don't understand that they're pulling the pillars of society, of civilization down. For how can you expect your civilization, your system, and your world order to keep going when you are defunding and destroying the very pillars that upheld it? With a dumbed down society, with all of the propaganda, the only thing that is allowed is a chorus of the same voices calling out. There's no difference of opinion that is being allowed in the so-called cradle of diversity. No diverse opinion is allowed. You make that make sense. Now, they dumb down for financial gain. They dumb you down for financial gain. And as they dumb you down for financial gain, they are putting thermite at the base of their own society. Cultural thermite. And we're seeing pillars falling as we speak. The increase and influx of drugs and violent crime. There is hardly one day in America that goes by that there is not a shootout or a mass shooting. If you focus on home and clear up what's at home, then you focus on what's out there. There's an old African proverb, one of my favorite ones, that America should take heed to. And it says that if there is no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm. If you take care of what's happening within your own borders, you don't have to worry about terrorism and racism and fascism abroad. You're too busy building and inspiring within your own borders. But this doesn't compute in their minds because these people have cultural grievances. They have hereditary grievances and historical grievances with Russia, and they are willing to push the world to the brink of war, as you saw yesterday. They don't know how to pause or stop. They only double down. And the only time that America pauses or wants to talk or negotiate is if she's catching it on both ends on the backside. She didn't want to talk about no Minsk agreement. Go back and look at this stuff. She did not want any Minsk agreement. The only thing that brought that to fruition or that agreement to the surface is when the rebels back then had the Ukrainian military surrounded and they were about to do them in. And then they were, let's call Putin. Let's call Putin. Angela Merkel. What is his name? The French president Macron, right? All of these people wanted to then call Putin and hammer out a deal. And as you saw what they admitted to last year and at the beginning of this year, we just did that to stall for time to build up the military. They had no plans on executing the agreements that were approved by the UN Security Council, which made it international law. They openly told you that they were flaunting international law. There was no demands for sanctions against these nations who were a party to and helped create the Minsk I and the Minsk II agreements. Right? And so they used that time, they bided their time to build up NATO infrastructure across Ukraine. They bided their time to help build up the Ukrainian military and armament to NATO standards. Remember that Ukraine had the largest and the second most powerful military in Europe after this 2014 escapade, right? America and NATO built it up to be an equal member of NATO, and Russia has shellacked it, has knocked its head around. With the entire Western world, they're saying that they cannot match or outmatch Russia's military industrial complex. They cannot beat Russia on the battlefield. They cannot bring Russia to its knees economically. And yet they still don't stop and say, hold on, there's got to be something wrong we're doing. So if there's something wrong we're doing, then guess what? Let us go back and let us reevaluate these things before things get out of hand. No, it is let me use another ruse to stall out until I'm able to make another move. This is insanity. You understand? This is insanity. And most people are not looking at this from this perspective. So when I bring this up, I get banned, I get shadow banned, I get all of these things that have happened since the show yesterday. And all of these, I wish I could show you these things, but I'm not going to do it because I might get completely put off YouTube. But I have never advocated violence, ethical violence, ethnic violence, excuse me, or racial violence. I've never advocated any of that stuff, but they're treating me like I am talking about going out and killing 700 black people or 10,000 white people or going to kill Jews. I've never advocated that. Never. You can't point to one show where I was talking about, let's go out and kill these people or something. No. Because I fear God. You understand? I'm telling you, listen. These platforms, along with the government, they better wake up, because what they're doing, they are alienating the very people that they claim to serve. They ignore the screams and the cries to be listened to by these people. And you know what that leads to? Revolution and war. So with me telling them this, common sense say, oh, hey, this makes sense. So if I listen to this and I put this into play, then maybe I can offset that or stall out revolution. Look at all of these other platforms because they're being censored. The same thing is happening. Look at how all of these nations are outside of the dollar now. These are sanctioned nations, the nations that America and the West sanctioned. They are now leading the call for de-dollarization. All of this has everything to do with what happened in Moscow. It is no coincidence that Zelensky was in Helsinki at the time of these things. But let's go back to some, because I haven't forgotten it. And if you hear something, there's an alarm going off. I can't get to it because it's actually outside the window, and it was reminding me of what to do with the chickens. I thought I would be off the air at this moment because I thought Larry would have come at this moment. So I can't get to this outside, and I have to go out there with the chickens. All right, but listen, it is no coincidence that Mr. Zelensky was in Helsinki, right? What he was doing was thumbing his nose up at Russia in a way. This was a covert way to thumb his nose up at Russia. Yeah, he can publicly disavow anything to do with what went on in Russia. And maybe he didn't know because he doesn't pull the strings of power. But at the same time, it was to show that if you strike me while I'm here in Helsinki, a new about to be a new NATO member, right? Or then you are attacking the whole NATO organization. This is what that was. All right. Now, this is what was said this morning. Let me read this to you, okay? The article is Washington responsible for attack on Kremlin, Moscow. And it says, Ukraine's actions are coordinated and approved by the U.S., Putin's spokesman has claimed. And it says, all of Kyiv's decisions are ultimately dictated. Let's stop right there. Let's go to something, okay? All right, let's see. Give me 1 second. Let's go to something. All right. The word dictated is a what is it? It's the past tense of the word dictate. The word dictate means to lay down authoritatively, to prescribe, to give orders to order around, to boss around, to impose one's will on, to utter, speak, read out, read aloud, or recite. Okay? So let's go back to that. All of Kiev's decisions are ultimately dictated, right, or ordered by what? Washington, including which targets to hit and by what means. Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov claimed on Thursday. His comments came after 2 Ukrainian drones unsuccessfully attempted to strike the Kremlin in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Such decisions, the definition of goals, the definition of means, and so on, all this is dictated to Kiev from Washington. And we are well aware of this now. The questions that I posed yesterday is this. If you know that Ukraine cannot act in a sovereign manner outside of US, UK, and Brussels dictates, and this took place, who is responsible? Is it Kiev or is it Washington, D.C., London, and Brussels? And if it is London, Brussels, and Washington, D.C., then they have committed a grand act of war. I'm not advocating war. I'm telling you what it is. If someone were to try to strike the White House, what would America say? That was an act of war, not an act of terrorism, an act of war. See, the Kremlin right now is trying to play low key on it, and this is the wrong thing that they should be doing. About constantly coming out saying that Ukraine is responsible, and then slowly saying that, well, we know that America makes the policies and the dictates. No, speak with one voice and be clear and direct, right? And tell the truth. As you was telling before the event took place, that Kiev is a puppet to DC, to London, and to Brussels. And this attempt on the Kremlin was a provocative act, but according to international law, this was an act of war. And by the laws of war, Russia now has the prerogative to strike. And I'm not advocating this. Listen to me good. I have to say this a million times because it seems like that part gets missed. I am just talking to you about international law. And according to international law, if a sovereign nation is struck by outside forces, or they shape and mold certain forces to do a certain thing, they are held accountable, and it is deemed as an act of war. And the country which is the recipient of those unlawful actions and deeds done on them, under international law, can take military action against those who did it. This is not an act of terrorism alone. This is an act of war. You understand? So if you play it down, you lose most of the power that comes with having that option. That's what I'm saying. Did George Bush play down 9/11? No, he did not. As a matter of fact, we played the clip where he talked to the people. It was so confident. This man didn't know his feet from his head. But when this took place, and the neocons were in power, and the neoliberals are in power, and they just switch up, he seized the moment to push the new American century agenda. And Russia should seize the moment to beat back NATO aggression. I'm not saying strike NATO. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if it was me, and I had the capabilities of Russia, I would issue an ultimatum. That's what I'm saying. Because all nations can't issue the ultimatum, because all nations are not in the economic, political, and military position that Russia is in. And maybe the only way to bring a halt to the war in Ukraine, maybe the only way to make the West realize that they have gone too far is to call their bluff and put the ball back in their court. Do you understand what I'm saying? Everything else has not worked. You warned them about red lines. They continue to overstep the red lines. You warned them over and over again about weaponry and weaponizing Ukraine. They ignored that. You warned them about sending nuclear weapons, which is depleted uranium. I don't care what you say. Depleted uranium is the leftover spent fuel from a nuclear bomb or reactor. That is the same as a nuclear bomb. And you have told them that if they did that, then Russia would consider that a dirty bomb. And guess what they did? They sent it anyhow. Why? Because if they continue to be allowed to overstep their bounds and step over every red line, they're not taking you serious. And they don't think that there's a threat of major escalation. Now you're in a position of escalatory dominance, and you have this gift in your hand. If you don't act on this gift and you just focus on Ukraine, eventually war will happen with you in the West, because they're going to keep up in the ante. And the way to prevent the war is to bump heads with them now. This is what I'm saying. I'm not in any way advocating violence or war or ethnic tensions or genocide or crimes against humanity in no way, shape, or form. I'm telling you what happened with America 9/11. I'm telling you international law. How is that advocating violence? The advocate of violence is the one who initiated the bombing of the Kremlin. Sanction them, censor them, not me. Do you understand? Listen, let's go back to something he said. He said, such decisions, the definition of goals, the definition of means, MEANS, and so on. All this is dictated to Kiev from Washington. Okay, if this is so and you are publicly stating this, then why are you so focused on Kiev? You are a sovereign, powerful, and respected nation. It is time for you to throw your weight around, especially with this. Listen, I'm advocating confronting the empire in a way that will halt war for a minute, because the empire will not completely stop. They're going to keep on doing what they're doing. But the only way to get their attention, sometimes you have to sock them in the mouth. Think about this to prove my point. Let's go back to something I said from yesterday's show. In 2014, the rebels in the Donbass had almost completely destroyed what was the Ukrainian army. And some pundits were talking about that in a few weeks, that they would be marching on Kiev and they would have Poroshenko in handcuffs and have him on trial. This is what they were advocating. You can go it, Google it, Yahoo it, Bing it, do whatever you want to do before they take it off the search engines, right? Excuse me. Now, had Putin not intervened, we wouldn't be at this situation right here. They would have. Remember, these people who did that, they were upset that the elected government was removed. They wanted their elected official back in power. If they would not have brought a halt to it and negotiated, we wouldn't be in this situation here, right? But Putin, in good faith, not wanting war and thinking that the West were in good faith doing negotiations is now realizing that the negotiations were in bad faith and were to buy time. So now, why would you just focus on Ukraine when you understand that the empire is not stopping? They're at your door. They're no longer down the street. See, it was one thing when they were in another city saying that they were going to do something to you, and I'm giving you an analogy. This thug from another city was threatening you. You could accept the threats because he was in another city and he was not directly affecting your sovereignty or your security. Then you hear a year later that the thug has moved to your city. Now you're kind of anxious. Okay, I hope this city is big enough I might not see him. Then before you know it, another year passes and the thug is in your neighborhood with the same malicious intent that he said from the jump, okay? The same malicious intent. And then the next year, the thug is down the block from you. Now you're not as anxious as you would be if he was on your doorstep, but you're anxious because he still is showing animosity and anger towards you and has a history of wanting to do some harm to you. Now, all of your negotiations have been in good faith, but they have come at a price. And you look around 2 days later, he's next door to you. He has moved next door to you. He's not stopping. This is a gradual grinding. And now he's at your front door. He's not in your yard. He's on your porch now. And you're still saying, my Western partners. This man has a bloodthirst to decapitate and to sterilize you. And you're talking about my partner. What you risk is the security and livelihoods of those who reside in your house. That's what I'm saying. So if you would have confronted the bully when he was in the other state and called the police and say, hey, you need to do something about this guy. He's been threatening me on, and I fear for my life, and I don't want him to try to take my life or force me to take his. If you would have gone through the process of handling that, maybe it would never have gotten to your front porch. This is what I'm saying. So in this moment, where the whole world is pouring out love and support for the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, and his entire squad, his administration, should not waste 1 minute. And they should not let this moment pass because history will judge them by this. Right now, we're looking at it because we're in the moment. But history will judge them by the way they act. You see, they're already judging them by the Minsk agreements. Angela Merkel, after she left office, she said, oh, yeah, that was just a ruse. We were just stringing them along. Macron, oh, yeah, we were just stringing them along. And they made Putin look like a fool. And then the hardliners in Russia say, we told you this. So it boxes him in. Right? So now you have a goose that lays golden eggs, and the goose has laid a golden egg in your lap. And you want the pressure off your nation. Use it or lose it. George Bush did not hesitate. I want to play this. I played this clip yesterday. It's a short clip. No, I'm not going to play it because they might say that I've used another thing. But it was George Bush. And he was in New York. And he was addressing the firefighters and the emergency workers. And he said, and as he was speaking, one of the firefighters said, we can't hear you. And George Bush turned around with the mic, with the bullhorn. He said, but I can hear you. And soon, the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us. That moment lives on. Because he see, right or wrong, I'm not talking about whether right or whether it was wrong. That's another argument. I'm not talking about was it a false flag or was it real. That's for another time to argue. he took that and he seized the moment, and America was able to try to implement and push her so-called democratic values on the entire world. We've been going through that since September 11, 2001, and it's brought us to this point. And now the Kremlin must match his intensity and be willing to do whatever it takes to put pressure on NATO and the U.S. Ukraine is a sidebar. Ultimatum should be given. Okay? Matter of fact, let me see something real quick. Give me 1 second while I'm talking to you guys. All right. Excuse me. Here we are. According to the dictionary, the word ultimatum is a noun. It is a final demand or statement of terms, the rejection of which will result in retaliation or a breakdown in relations. I'm not advocating in, listen to the definition. When I say an ultimatum, I'm not talking about going out doing crazy stuff. I'm saying measured, but powerful. A final demand or statement of terms, the rejection of which will result in retaliation or a breakdown in relations. So the ultimatum should be, listen, this event would have never happened had you guys never crossed our red lines. And if we had been more firm in the beginning. From this point on, Russia will no longer allow the free flow of weapons to the government of Kiev and the military of the Ukraine. From this point on, we will do what's necessary and interdict any and all shipments, be they on Ukrainian soil or on surrounding nation soils. And then commence to doing it with a show of force. All right? This is what I'm saying. If not, America will be right back on your border. Look what she's done. She lost Ukraine, and then she sidestepped you and went to another nation that's on your border. This shows you that she won't stop. Right? What is that song? What's the rapper? Puff Daddy. I told you that we won't stop. That's America. We won't stop. Our goal is the eventual balkanization of the Russian Federation. They stated that. And Hillary Clinton openly mocked Russia and said that it is unfair that Russia has all of these hydrocarbons and all of these resources. She should be broken up and the wealth should be shared with the world. That's Hillary Clinton. So the former first lady, former senator, and we know that she has a history, a bad history with Russia because she's one of those Rodhams, Hillary Rodham Clinton, who has their roots over there in Poland, in those areas over there. So all of these people like Newland, they have their lineage over there. They have some type of beef with Russia. And it's a beef where they transcend administrations. So regardless to who you get in power, the policies are still implemented. And it's pushing us up to thermonuclear war. And what we're trying to do is show you, listen, the path that you're going will lead to nuclear war. But if you take these measures, maybe you can prevent it. Right? Well, the smoke and the bear say, only you can prevent forest fires. Well, only Russia and her allies can prevent what is taking place. But you have to act on it. You have to act on it. Let's see. Again, before, let me go to the chat real quick. I'm just missing the chat because I see a lot of stuff in the chat. Let's see. All right, let me go up to the chat. I hate it. Oh, thank you, Tom Mallard. He's become a Red Pill Army soldier. For those of you who don't know, we just got, we were able to have channel members. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really, really, really appreciate that. And he says, welcome to the, well, it says that they're welcome to the Red Pill Army soldier. And it says, the White Anderson says, thank you, my brother. You always speak facts. God's blessings on you and your family. Thank you. And may God bless you, your family, and keep you safe. And thank you for giving me your ear for this time that we're on the air. Listen, for those of you who give me your time, I am so appreciative and I'm humble because of that. And if I didn't say it, I'm a grown man. My mom might slap the taste out my mouth because she watches the show too. So this is why I don't understand why I'm under such a burden. I understand, but I don't understand why I'm under such a burden with these platforms to try to keep my numbers low and keep everything down. We have Larry in the building. He has made it here. We have him in the building. And for those of you who have been listening to the show, thank you for maintaining, and we kept it up. And I'm going to bring, without further ado, let me bring my colleague Larry. He's solid. He's 100. Let me bring him in. Let's see.
Hey, my friend, I'm sorry I got tied up, taken hostage at 11.
Hey, things happen. That's life, Larry. But I was telling the people that you were solid, so I wasn't even worried about that. First of all, before we get anything, how's your day, man? We got to put more human aspects on these things sometimes, man.
Yeah, it's been a little crazy. This whole attack on the Kremlin and the alleged attempt to assassinate Putin has really spun everybody up. So I've been, in fact, right after I get done with this, I'm going to go on RT. They're interviewing me. I was in Sputnik before that, and I forgot I was on Emerald Robinson earlier this morning. So it's been bang, 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 bang. I had to make room for you, brother.
Man, I really appreciate it. This guy is solid. I'm telling you, Larry. This is what Dmitry Medvedev said this morning. It says Washington is responsible for the attack on the Kremlin. This is coming out of Moscow. It says Ukraine's actions are coordinated and approved by the U.S. Putin's spokesman has claimed, Dmitry Peskov. He says this. All of Kyiv's decisions are ultimately dictated by Washington, including which targets to hit and by what means. Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov claimed on Thursday his comments came after two Ukrainian drones unsuccessfully attempted to strike the Kremlin in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Where is this lead? Where is this going? And has the U.S. pushed this a little bit too far?
Well, I don't think the United States was involved or even gave a tacit green light to do this. I think the Ukrainians did it on their own. Sort of as a side note, the funniest thing I've seen so far was Leon Panetta. Remember, Panetta was one of the signatories to the letter claiming that computer, alleged Hunter Biden laptop computer, was Russian disinformation. And so he's out there today saying, oh, yes, this was a Russian false flag attack. The Russians did this. And I said, yep, he's batting 1,000 in terms of lying. I do believe that Ukraine did this. Ukraine did it on their own. It was probably done by a group that infiltrated, across the Russian border, launched these drones from a location inside of Russia rather than directly out of Ukraine. They really were not. They didn't pose a threat to assassinate Putin, and they didn't carry a lot of high explosives. They really didn't do any damage to the roof of the Kremlin, but it was symbolic. Now, I've got a good friend, a retired Navy SEAL, and he likens this to all you need to do is put one mine in the front of a harbor, and after that you can close down operations because everybody's checking everything. I don't really think that has been the effect of this drone. I think it's been just the opposite, because as you started with Medvedev's comment, it matters what the real intent of the drone was. It matters what the effect of the drone is on the political situation in Moscow. And what that has done has united the Russian people in their anger at Ukraine and the West for attacking what is considered a sacred spot in the center of Moscow. When you realize that that area has not been attacked in this way by an aerial attack since the Nazis were flying over it in December of 1941, it helps you take on and appreciate the significance of it. So this has literally enraged not just Medvedev, but different members of the Duma, which is the Russian version of Congress. They have been, my favorite quote by one of them is, "This is no longer a red line, this is a stoplight." So they're all calling for some sort of retaliation and action against Zelensky personally, which may help explain why Zelensky's out. He's now today in the Netherlands at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Yesterday he's in Finland, so it looks like he's going on the road. He's not staying home in Ukraine for fear that he's going to get whacked.
I like the statement, and I'm butchering it, but one of the congressmen over there said that Ukraine wanted to show, and I was reading it on your blog, Sonar 21, and he was saying Ukraine wants to show us that they have long arms that can reach us. He says, well, and we should respond and show them that we. And I'm butchering it, but he said to chop off those arms or something of the sort. And that was like my favorite line. I was like, that's something like Clint Eastwood would say. But what do you think Russia's response will be, and will it be spectacular and powerful?
I don't think it's going to be spectacular. It's not going to be driven by emotion. If you watch Putin and you watch Shoigu and Gerasimov, the leading generals, they're not emotionally immature. They're not just going to be livid and say, okay, we're going to strike back and just punch them for the sake of punching's sake. They have a military plan in place. And I believe they've got intelligence. They have intelligence knowing what Ukraine is actually planning to do. And so Russia, instead of revealing that, yeah, we know what you're up to, they're keeping it quiet and making their preparations to respond. So I doubt that they're going to actually try to hit the headquarters of the general staff of the Ukrainian army. Why? Because I believe Russia actually has human sources, spies in that organization, and they don't want to run the risk of killing them. Better to keep the information flowing as opposed to knocking them out. The Russians have always been careful to try to avoid civilian casualties. Unlike the United States, whether we're talking Fallujah or Hiroshima or Dresden during World War II, we've been quite skilled at mass bombing and causing human casualties without regard to the effect on those civilians. Russia has been just the opposite, and it's been sort of a hallmark of Russian military doctrine over the years. So I think they're going to continue to ramp up the response. What you're seeing Ukraine doing right now is they've also been escalating their activity, but their activity is on a much smaller scale. It's more in the area of sabotage, small raids, artillery strikes in civilian areas. They're not attacking hard military targets. That's been sort of the hallmark of, I'll call it the cowardice of the Ukrainians. They're very good at bombing defenseless civilian areas. They are not very good at going after Russian military targets, partly because they fear what's known as counter battery, that those Russian targets, military targets, could fire right back at them and take them out.
What is the political scene in Europe like now? Because I see that they're trying to back out of some of the previous statements about supporting Ukraine to go after Crimea and to attack Russia proper. Now I see the German chancellor backing back. I see Macron. It seems like he's stunned. You see reports all over. I mean, what is the political climate like right now, and what do they believe that is getting ready to happen?
Well, Europe is starting to fracture in terms of what was facet in supporting Ukraine and opposing Russia. You are starting to see some major fissures developed. So, and you get some indications of the growing tensions. Just last week in Poland, the number one general, the Polish military, who previously had been very supportive and complimentary of Ukraine, came out very directly and said, Ukraine cannot win this upcoming counteroffensive. They don't manpower, they don't have enough weapons, they don't have enough vehicles. It's a feckless effort on their part. So you're starting to see that kind of sentiment emerge. I think a lot rides on what the Ukrainians do in the coming 3 to 4 weeks, because the expectations have been set very high that they're to launch a major offensive, that they are going to push the Russians out, cut off the Crimea, force the Russians back. If they do any of that, I mean, if they actually come up and attack a defended Russian line where there is a significant Russian presence, and they defeat that, that would be significant. That would be remarkable, because it hasn't happened yet in the entire course of this special military operation. The Ukrainians are great at running what I call PR attacks. So they will show images of soldiers taking a border outpost, except they're carrying along the border marker with them, and then they get out in the middle of the woods and put it down and say, "Oh, we got it," they fabricate things. Or when they, the capture of Kirkuk or Kharkiv, again, that was not heavily defended by the Russians. It was lightly defended with basic military police. And so they withdrew from the area rather than trying to fight against, they didn't have the forces in place. Well, one thing I think you're likely to see is the U.S. and NATO intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities may have identified a spot or two along the Ukrainian line where Ukraine might be able to launch an attack and not face significant opposition and be able to declare a PR victory. I think that's entirely likely, and one thing that will possibly be seen in the next few weeks. But it's not going to really change anything in terms of the actual tactical situation or strategic situation on the battlefield. The realities are Ukrainians are short of manpower, short of weapons, short of tanks, short of planes, short of air defense. And the Russians are just the opposite. They have ample supplies on all fronts of manpower, ammunition, tanks, planes, artillery pieces, artillery shells. So it's just, it's just a matter of what we're seeing is a war of perception right now, trying to manage perceptions and keep hope up. And if Ukraine's not able to pull this off, I think then we'll get a complete fracturing of that support. It'll start falling away in Europe. So Europe is, Europe's unity right now is already shaky. After that, it'll become unsustainable.
One of our channel members says, let me highlight it. It should be highlighted. Right. Oh, there we are. The Russian, I guess the Russian government stated that they're going to bomb Kiev's government buildings. We'll see if they wipe out the catacombs with their leaders. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think Russia is going to go out to destroy the government buildings yet, in part because I think they want to still have them attacked when they take over Kiev so that they can set up a government. There are Russian bombs that people are ignoring. They've got a significant troop presence just north of Kiev in Belarus, and with also the military support of the Belarusian government. It's very possible that in the midst of an offensive, any attempt to launch an offensive down south of Kiev, in the southern portion around near Crimea and Melitopol, that Russia could counter that by launching an attack from the north. So I don't see them targeting the civilian infrastructure, at least not yet. if there was a massive attack that actually hit, let's say, the Russian Duma in Moscow, and really destroyed the building or killed civilians, then at that point, I think Russia would be compelled to respond accordingly and more extensively. But I don't see that right now.
What do you think? And I'm trying to catch the comment. It's scrolling down fast. So, but what do you think is going on in the Kremlin right now? And how does this change the battlefield position in politics with this event taking place and putting pressure on Putin to respond?
Well, Putin, I just saw another video of him taking a meeting today. He's not at all upset. He's not showing any panic. He maintains a good poker face, that's for sure. And similarly, when you look at when you see some of the recent appearances by Gerasimov and Shoigu, they're not showing any kind of panic or emotion either. I think that they view this as very serious business because they recognize the very survival of Russia as a nation is at stake, and so they've been planning accordingly, and that plan is constantly updated. They have tremendous intelligence assets embedded in the West, in NATO, in Ukraine, and in places like Poland, so that they have human sources that are providing them information where they're able to more accurately judge what the true intentions and plans of both Ukraine and the United States and NATO are. So that within that they're not like some drunk guy in a bar just throwing haymakers right and left, windmill punches. They're more like a skilled boxer. They're waiting, they're looking for openings, and they throw their punches as needed. And they, as we have seen, are very powerful punches. They can continue to launch missile and drone strikes that Ukraine, despite its claims to the contrary, cannot stop and cannot terminate.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think after this strike that Russia will now take all of Ukraine, or at least take Odessa?
Yeah, no, I think they're ultimately when the whole war is, that they will retake Odessa, and they'll probably take Transnistria too. I think that's in the long-term plan. They're going to build up a buffer for themselves to the west of Kiev, so that they will not face. Let me put it this way: right now, the United States has deployed missile batteries in Poland and Romania that Putin was warning in December of 2021 could reach Moscow in 7 to 10 minutes. So clearly saw that as a threat, that we could potentially put nuclear warheads on those missiles. So Russia wants to end that threat, and long-term negotiation will be on compelling the United States to withdraw those kinds of weapon systems from Russia's border. They're not like this just in terms of we need to beat Ukraine now. They have a much longer term objective. They really want to ensure the border security of Russia against threats from the West.
Well, why is it that the media doesn't have a problem in Russia is being aggressive, but this is what they say: Russia is being aggressive, but they don't have a problem with America stationing strike platforms in neighboring nations of Russia, but they go berserk if Russia even hints at redeploying troops and weapons to Cuba?
Yeah, it's just we've got a propaganda outfit masquerading as journalism across the board. Rashid, reality is going to ultimately intrude on us here because of the economic reality. If you think about this, in the last 20 years, the defense budget has more than doubled in size in the United States. and we're closing in on $1 trillion a year to sustain the most expensive military operation in the world at the very time when regional banks are in literally collapse across this country. We've had more bank failures now than we did in 2008. So it's one of those that reality is ultimately going to come home. The United States will not be able to sustain these kinds of military operations. That's where we are.
So will those bases close down as we go into an economic tailspin because she won't have the money to fund them, and people are sidestepping the dollar? Do you think the empire is on its last leg and will be forced to live within its means anytime soon?
Yeah, I think America is getting ready to repeat history the same way that it befell and crushed Rome, crushed Greece, throughout history, even Egypt. Whenever nations become embroiled continually in wars outside their boundaries of their country, it saps resources. It diverts economic priorities. It causes loss of capital, both in terms of human resources and in actual money. When you look at what's going on in this country today with the number of kids coming out of particularly inner city schools that are not functionally literate. They're being passed along, and yet they can't read or read it at a grade level anyway, and can't do math at grade level. They can make change in the streets for drug purchases. We get that down, because if you don't get that right, you get killed. The number of people dying, particularly teenagers, young adults dying of fentanyl overdose from drug abuse. So it's just, and then you look at the violence that is just shaking these urban neighborhoods, and sadly, it's mostly people who are black who are being victimized. I guarantee you, if it was largely white people getting killed like that, somebody would stand up and do something. And yet, with all this going on, what are we doing? We're spending $120 billion in Ukraine. That amount of money, what it could do domestically to change the face of this country, to modernize transportation networks and repair bridges and roadways, upgrade internet connections, a whole host of things. And yet we're letting ourselves rot from the inside here, and we're spending money overseas. It's things like that caused Rome to collapse. And I believe the United States is sowing the seeds of its own destruction by this kind of obsession with spending money overseas.
So are we living in the fall of America?
Sadly, I believe we are. America's best days are not ahead of us if we continue on this path that we've been on, the path of overthrowing and trying to other governments and trying to impose our will on countries. And we've gotten to a place where we're now coercing people with economic sanctions. If they don't do what we want, we threaten them with economic sanctions. And more countries are starting to look around and say, yeah, we're not going to put up with that. They're looking for alternatives to the U.S. dollar, because if they're not dependent on the U.S. dollar, then U.S. sanctions are meaningless. They said, we're going to withhold our dollars. Fine, we're not going to buy any dollars. It cuts two ways.
Well, I'm going to cut it short for you, because I want you to come back soon, and I know you have a schedule that's unreal. And so I don't want to hold you long, because we already talked about this. I'm just thankful that you gave us a brief moment of your time. And man, that means the world. Larry, I'm going to, as soon as the stream ends, I'll send you the link to the show. So be looking for that.
I appreciate that, brother. Thanks so much. Right. Always a pleasure, Rashid. Okay.
All right, man. Be blessed and be safe. All right.
Thank you.
For everybody who's listening, we thank Larry for joining us. Now, I want to, Naeem88, I'm looking for your other comment. I saw it, but the screen on my thing, I wanted to highlight what you said, and I was searching for it as you guys kept seeing me look away. I was searching for it. First of all, I want to take the time out to thank Tom Mallard and Naeem88 for becoming new members of the channel. I thank you so much. And Naeem88 I go back like we go back like seats in Cadillacs. We go back a long way. So he's followed me on different platforms and he's supported. And I really, really appreciate it. I want to give you your flowers publicly. And Tom, I want to give you your flowers publicly for supporting the channel and supporting the movement and try. And I want all of you to look in the descriptions down here and sign up to all of the other platforms. They're free. We do live streaming on those platforms too. We're trying to build a movement of truth, and we're trying to replace madness with responsibility. All right, with men, making men be men, women be women, to respect each other, because you can never get out of a situation if you don't have any respect for yourself and others. And we want to inform you and give you the truth that is needed to dodge all of these economic, political, and geopolitical missiles that are being shot. Okay. And so, again, we'd like to thank Larry for coming on. Let me go to the chat real quick and see if I can highlight a few things. Naeem, I am sorry, man. I can't see your, on my screen, I can't see your second comment, but I can see your member thing, and I'm going to highlight it again. I really apologize. I don't see it. All right. And maybe things go, so maybe at the end of the show, if I see it at the end of the show as we're going off, I will highlight it. Now we say S North says Russia must march in Kiev and encase the city. I believe that anything short of taking the city, not just Kiev, but I believe anything less than short of taking Ukraine, and I'm not talking about incorporating it with Russia. I'm talking about denazifying it and Western ifying it and de-NATO-ifying it, right? Anything less than that, Russia's just going to be starting at square one again, doing this thing all over again if she does not take the time out to do these things. That is just real. That is just real. Let's see, before we go off, let me see. Jenny BN says, cheers for having Larry back to speak his truth. Hey, try to, it says, and let's see, let's go down. All right, Kathleen Adams, you say the money has gone to the arms manufacturers. It doesn't matter whether the equipment gets delivered or not. They can use it in Sudan or Chile. Now the Chile is going to nationalize lithium mine. Well, you already know that. Expect some trouble, but I believe the empire is biting off too much. I do. I believe they're biting off too much, and I believe that trouble is on its way. Now, as we go out, I am going to highlight something. I think I can hold on. I'm gonna backtrack. I'm gonna leave Naeem's other comment up here, because he's a channel member, and I have to highlight his comment. And I think this may be the one right here. We're gonna so I'm gonna highlight this, and I'm gonna, because I think this is a fitting into the show, I'm gonna highlight his comment and thank him for becoming a member. And I'm going, let's see, because a lot of this is being blocked. Okay, now I got my dashboard. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining on this live, because you've given me your time, and that humbles me. Time is the most precious asset. It is a non-renewable resource. And once you give your time, make sure you get an equal or greater pay or trade for your time, because once it's gone, you can never get it back. On that note, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for showing up and showing out. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for lending me your ear and lending Larry your ear. We go out the same way we always come in the name of God, with love and truth and peace for each and every one of you who love truth. I love you, but remember that Almighty God in person will always love you best. until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. And I gotta say it, Mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you so much.